So good evening all. So this is my first interaction with you all. So in case you have any doubt during the presentation, do interrupt me, do ask your questions, or else we can take it at the end as you like it. Okay. So this will be, I'll be covering on the general principles and approach to bone tumors. So I know this is a bit boring topic and bit confusing topic, but I have tried to make it as simple and as interesting as possible. So let me know. I mean, whenever you feel that the things are going above your head or you want me to stop, I'll stop. So just a minute. Yeah. So we all know the basic principles of tumor that no unplanned surgery should be done, things should be biopsied, this and that. So, but when we actually see a patient of bone tumor in our OPD, or we see come across this X-ray, right, like we see on your right, so we tend to get confused as to how to approach these kind of patients, whether to get an MRI done, whether to get a CT done, whether to get a PET CT scan done, or a FNAC or a biopsy, and so on. So in this topic, so I hope by the end of this lecture you must be clear that how to approach these kind of patients whenever you see these patients in your OPD. The problem is, no matter how many times we read Campbell and we read all those approach to bone tumors, when we actually have a patient, so we tend to to get confused. So anyways, so I'll start so with the this thing, the approach to bone tumor. So we must realize that a bone tumor, the diagnosis of a bone tumor rests on three things. First, it's the detailed clinical assessment. So when I say a clinical assessment, it includes both the history as well as the examination of the patient. Secondly, it also includes the radiological evaluation. So you must have read many histopathology reports. They say advise clinical radiological correlation. And last but not the least, it's the histopathological confirmation, which is the biopsy. So in all these three things have to match. So no matter, even if your X-ray looks like benign lesion, but the pathologist says it's malignancy or vice versa, so things should match with each other. Otherwise, we will not reach a correct diagnosis. For example, a patient of a myositis ossificans, so he will have, unless you give the history to the pathologist, he will report it as osteosarcoma. So a thing should match, clinical radiology should match with the pathology, as we say. So coming to the first part, which is the clinical assessment. So the first thing which one should notice once the patient walks to your OPD is the age of the patient. So we have these kind of various charts available in your textbooks and various articles, but I personally find it very difficult to remember because it's all cramming up. So I have divided this age criteria into three simple age brackets. Number one is children and adolescent. Second is young adults and middle age, and third is elderly. So when I say children and adolescents, so I have broadened the category. It's not like 0 to 10 or 0 to 15 or 1 to 15 or 5 to 15. Because, for example, if I say 5 to 15, what if the patient, it does not mean that a patient of 16 years can't have the same tumor like 5 to 15, and so on. So when I say children and adolescent, you have a vague idea as in which age bracket this particular patient falls in. So whenever we have a children or adolescents, so if you see, remember like this, there are few cystic lesions common in this age group, that is either a simple bone cyst or an aneurysmal bone cyst. So if you have a fibrous lesions, it could be either fibrous dysplasia or a non-ossifying fibroma. If you have a chondroid lesion, it could be an osteochondroma or a chondroblastoma. Or if you have bone forming lesion, it could be an osteoid osteoma or osteoblastoma. Or coming to the malignancies in this age group, so most common is the Ewing sarcoma and the osteosarcoma, and we can also have leukemias in this age group. And also to mention, we can have a patient of Langerhans cell histiocytosis. So though it's still not clear whether to call it a neoplasm or autoimmune disease, but you can still have a patient with a similar finding like a pain and lytic areas on X-rays, and it may turn out to be LCH. So coming to the second age bracket, which is young adults and the middle age, the most common is the giant cell tumor, as we all know. And if in case of fibrous lesion, it could be fibrous dysplasia, or in a chondroid lesion, it could be chondroblastoma, but it's usually only till 25 years of age, or it could be enchondroma. And coming to the malignancies in these age group, it could be adenocarcinoma or a chondrosarcoma, but chondrosarcoma usually comes in middle age or after middle age in the elderly population. And coming to the elderly population, the benign things which you can see is the fibrous dysplasia. It's very rare for an elderly patient to have a diagnosis. I mean, the diagnosis picked up in the elderly age group. Many a times patients, they have this diagnosis since years, but this may be presenting to the OPD as an incidental finding, or they may present with some pathological fractures, or they may have this x-rays done. Let's say they want to get a TKR done, and you get the x-rays knee, and you may notice some area of fibrous dysplasia on the distal part of the femur, and so on. And we can also have a cartilaginous lesion like enchondroma. Again, whenever you get x-rays done for TKR or a THR, and we see some chondroid areas in the distal part of the femur, it could be because of enchondroma. So we must be aware of this thing. Coming to the malignancies, obviously malignancies are more common in the elderly age group. The most common is obviously the metastasis, as we all know. And in the primary malignancies, it could be multiple myeloma or lymphoma. And not to mention that even primary bone sarcomas like chondrosarcoma or secondary osteosarcomas, they're also common in the elderly age group. So basically, the age gives us a rough idea as to what could be the possible diagnosis in that patient. For example, I can't expect a 5-year-old to have adenocarcinoma or a myeloma or a metastasis and so on. So next common thing to look for is what's the status of pain for that patient. So is it, and in the pain, so what's the onset of pain? Because in benign in the recent onset pains, it's usually signifies that it is an aggressive kind of a tumor. But in case the duration is quite long, it signifies a benign. But again, these are not very hard criteria. We can have a vice versa things as well. And second is the type of the pain. So as we all know, typical night pain is sine qua non of osteoid osteoma. But if a patient presents to us with typical off and on pain, it could be because of fibrous dysplasia. The typical history is that I have some pain which is there for 10-15 days, then I take rest, it goes, then I do unaccustomed activities, maybe I run or do something, and again this pain flares up, and so on. So these kind of patients of fibrous dysplasia can have waxing waning kind of a pain which lingers on for months to years depending on the time when the patient presents to you. And many lesions don't have any pain. For example, enchondroma or an osteochondroma may present without any pain. Osteochondroma may have pain as in case of some bursitis or nerve impingement and so on, but by and large, osteochondromas, they are painless. Second is the location of the tumor, as when the patient presents to you. For example, if it's the lesion in the knee, the most common things, the tumors are usually giant cell tumor or osteo or an Ewing sarcoma. In case of the scapular or pelvic region, the flat bones, we have the Ewing sarcoma in the children and chondrosarcoma in the adults and elderly age group. And in the wrist, again, the common tumor is seen is giant cell tumor, and in the hand, the most common is enchondroma. So just by when the patient walks in, they tell, okay, I have some issue with my hand. If you see a middle-aged person, so you can think that it could be a GCT or an enchondroma. Similarly, if an adolescent walks to your OPD with the large swelling in the knee, so you straight away suspect that it could be some sarcoma, maybe Ewing's or osteo. So age, location, the type of pain, everything put together gives you a fair idea that what could the lesion be even before you look at the X-ray. So coming to after the clinical assessment, coming to the radiological evaluation, so we have to take care of few points whenever you are having a look at the X-ray. So if you follow this point systematically, then you may be able to reach the differential diagnosis in majority of the patients, or maybe almost all the patients. So the first thing which one should look at is the age of the patient. Obviously, we may not be able to tell the exact age by looking at the X-ray, but we can differentiate whether it is a skeletally mature patient or a skeletally immature patient. Second is what's the location of the tumor. I'll discuss all these points when I come to it. And third is the type of the lesion. Fourth is the matrix of the lesion. Fifth is the zone of transition. Then it's the type of the periosteal reaction, if any, and then last is the soft tissue component, if any. So if you look at the X-ray and in your mind you answer to all these 7 points, then you may be able to reach the diagnosis in majority of the patients. So coming to the age, for example, you can see well-defined lytic areas in these two X-rays. But on the left, it's a skeletally immature patient. So most common differential in that age group is aneurysmal bone cyst. but on the right, it is a skeletally mature patient. So it could be a giant cell tumor, well defined. So I'm not saying that it can't be anything else, but these are the most common differentials in these age groups with this kind of X-ray pictures. So age gives us a fair idea as to what we are dealing with. Second is the location of the tumor. So when we say the location of the tumor, it could be divided into two things. It could be, when I'm saying, it could be in the longitudinal axis or location in the transverse axis. So what does that mean? Like in the longitudinal axis, whether the tumor is located in the epiphyseal region, metaphyseal region, or the diaphyseal region, or in the transverse axis, is it cortical or medullary? So this is very important, because we all think about the epiphyseal, metaphyseal, and diaphyseal, but we never tend to think about the cortical or the medullary, whether lesion is in the cortex or in the medulla. So coming to the longitudinal axis, the most common tumors in the epiphyseal locations, they are giant cell tumor, like we see on the X-ray on the left, or it could be a chondroblastoma, or it could be a clear cell chondrosarcoma. So if I take you back, all three X-rays look pretty much the same, the well-defined kind of a picture with expansile lesion and some septae. So, and all of them are epiphyseal in location. And next is the metaphyseal tumors, which commonly include, the cartilaginous kinds include the osteochondroma or the enchondroma, or if in a cystic kind of a thing, it could be a UBC or an ABC. It's always good to remember your differentials in this way, whether that is a chondroid lesion, whether that is a cystic lesion, whether there is a fibrous lesion. And similarly, whenever you have a look at the X-ray, just keep answering whether this looks like a chondroid lesion or a cystic lesion or a fibrous lesion, and so on. And it could be a fibrous lesion, like we have the non-ossifying fibroma, the X-ray on the left, or a fibrous dysplasia, the X-ray on the right. Or we could have some malignancies like osteosarcoma, the X-ray on the left, or a chondrosarcoma, the X-ray on the right. And last but not the least, even Ewing sarcoma. So many of us tend to think that Ewing sarcoma is diaphyseal. So Ewing sarcoma is diaphyseal in 50% of the patient. That means Ewing sarcoma is metaphyseal in rest 50%. So whenever we see a metaphyseal tumor in an adolescent, Ewing sarcoma should also be the differential. It's not that. And similarly, whenever I've seen many students just having a look at the diaphyseal tumor and just straight away jumping to diagnosis of Ewing sarcoma. Mind you, osteosarcomas are also diaphyseal in less than around 8 to 10% of the patients. So just by the location, do not jump to the diagnosis. Look at the other criteria before going to the differential diagnosis. So the point here is Ewing sarcoma is also metaphyseal in 50% of the patients. So coming to the diaphyseal location, just wait, there is some problem, I think. My computer has hanged up. I just wait a minute, please. So am I audible now? Can you just drop me a message or unmute someone, any one of you unmute yourself, please?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're audible.
Okay, fine. Thank you. So coming to the diaphyseal tumor, if we have a fibrous kind of a lesion, it could be a non-ossifying fibroma or a fibrous dysplasia or osteofibrous dysplasia. So we could have another lesion called as adamentinoma that's also in the diaphysis. We could have malignancy in the form of Ewing sarcoma in diaphysis. And rarely, as I said, in around 8 to 10% of the patients, even osteosarcoma is diaphyseal. So don't think that osteosarcoma cannot be diaphyseal, but that should not be your first differentiation. For example, you can see a the typical sclerotic lesion, ill-defined sclerotic lesion in the diaphysis, which is a hallmark of osteosarcoma. There's some problem with the, yeah. And also we can have myeloma or metastasis again in the diaphysis. On the left, you can see X-ray of a myeloma, and the right, there was a metastasis from RCC causing this kind of destruction in the femur. So next, coming to the transverse axis, it could be cortical lesion, like we have on this X-ray on the left, a non-ossifying fibroma, or we could have an osteofibrous dysplasia or adamentinoma. So all these three lesions, they are cortical lesions. So which are usually seen, can be differentiated only on X-rays. But if you have a problem, just go to the axial sections on the MRI to look for whether the lesion is cortical or medulla based. And similarly, we can have an osteoid osteoma as a cortical lesion. And rarely a metastasis can also present as a cortical lesion, typically metastasis from breast or lung. So this is a chart. Again, I find it difficult to mug up, but still, just for the sake of completion, I have kept it in my slides. So next is the type of the lesion. So whether the lesion is geographical, which means that there is a well-defined borders, we can easily make out where the tumor is ending and where the normal bone is beginning. For examples include the cystic lesion like UBC or ABC, or a giant cell tumor, or a non-ossifying fibroma, chondroblastoma, and so on. Or it could be a moth-eaten appearance where the lesion looked as if it's punched out, and you can see there is some destruction. I mean, the zone of demarcation is not as clear as in geographical lesion. Examples include multiple myeloma. And then we have a permeative lesion when there is no clear-cut demarcation between the normal and the abnormal bone. For example, many malignancies like osteosarcoma, Ewing sarcoma, metastasis, or leukemia, like we can see in the X-rays in these pictures, there is no clear-cut demarcation as to where the abnormal bone is stopped and where abnormal bone ends and the normal bone starts. And next is the matrix of the tumor. So matrix means as to what is the content of the tumor inside. So we could have a fibrous kind of a matrix like we see in the ground glass, typically seen in fibrous dysplasia. Or we could have a popcorn kind of a calcification, typically seen in chondroid lesions, be it enchondroma or chondrosarcoma, or I mean the chondroid tumors or cartilaginous tumors. Then we have an osseous or ivory matrix, typically seen in bone forming tumors like osteosarcoma. And then we have tumors which have no matrix, which include giant cell tumor, epidysmal bone cyst, Ewing sarcoma, and so on. Next comes the zone of transition. So it basically tells us to how clearly can we demarcate an abnormal bone from the normal bone. So if the zone of transition is narrow, that means there is a clear-cut transition between the abnormal and the normal bone. It usually signifies benign tumors. For example, here we can see there is a clear-cut zone of demarcation between the abnormal and the normal. Or it could be a wide zone of transition, typically seen in malignant bone tumors, where we cannot differentiate where the abnormal bone is ending and the normal is starting. So next is the thing to look in X is the periosteal reaction. It is basically what the body is doing to the lesion. So it could be a solid periosteal reaction like we see in infection or an osteoid osteoma, or it could be a lamellated kind of a periosteal reaction like we see in the typical onion peel reaction of Ewing sarcoma. Or it could be a spiculated kind of a periosteal reaction like we see the sunburst kind of a appearance in osteosarcoma. Or it could be a Codman kind of a triangle like this seen in this patient of osteosarcoma proximal tibia. So basically all these lamellated, spiculated, or Codmans, they are features of a malignant bone tumors. So next is the soft tissue component, whether the X-rays, whether we can appreciate any soft tissue component on the X-ray as well. So it's usually seen in either a giant cell tumor or malignant bone tumors, giant cell tumor or malignant bone tumors, like we can see on the X-rays given here. So I hope you are all with me. And so this is another X-ray. So I would like any one of you to volunteer yourself and unmute yourself and just describe this X-ray for me. Dr. Ash, are you there? Dr. Ash, Ashwarya, sorry. Dr. Paul, come on, please.
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Sir, this is hello.
Dr. Paul, yes, please. So we
Sir,
have
this
these
is
7
the,
headings.
sir, this is the X-ray of a skeletally immature patient of the X-ray of knee of the skeletally immature patient, showing a well-defined lesion in the proximal part of metaphysis of the knee, which is well defined. The matrix is.
So when you say well defined, we should also say well defined geographical kind of a thing, na? So
Well-defined
lesion, when we
geographically.
say lesion, it's geographical, or you add typically lytic geographical lesion, lytic kind of geographical kind of a lytic lesion.
With no matrix calcification or ossification, with narrow zone of transition, with no periosteal reaction, and with no soft tissue component and pathological fracture.
Okay. So what could be the differential, possible differential here?
Aneurysmal bone cyst.
Yes, very good. So it could be aneurysmal bone cyst. It looks like a cystic kind of a thing, and obviously it's eccentric. So I will keep aneurysmal bone cyst as my first differential. So just another, just to add to the this thing, what's the closest differential of aneurysmal bone cyst? Any malignancy which is looks almost similar to aneurysmal bone cyst?
Yes, sir. GCT.
No, it's telangiectatic osteosarcoma, which looks, I'm saying the malignancy, I'm not saying the benign tumor. So telangiectatic osteosarcoma also has fluid levels on MRI like we see on ABC. So that thing we must keep in mind. Anyways, so so this was an X-ray of an ABC, as rightly pointed out by Dr. Paul. So another one. So this time, who would like to volunteer? Dr. Sahil, are you there? Dr. Sahil Kanwar. Dr. Rohit Bansal. It's okay even if you make mistakes, but I think it's okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Rohit. Yeah, please.
This is an X-ray of a skeletally immature patient. Distal knee, and the location of the tumor is proximal distal femur in the metaphysis. And the type of lesion is sir, it's a permeative type of lesion.
Permeative type of a lesion. Okay, fair enough. Agreed.
And there is a matrix is like a ossified matrix with some bone forming lesion.
Bone forming matrix. Very good. Zone of transition.
So wide zone of transition, probably
wide
a malignant tumor.
Yes.
With sir, Codman type of periosteal reaction. I can say like laminated.
Well, so no, this is a Codman kind of a periosteal reaction here. You can see some Codman kind of a thing here.
Yes,
and we also have a sunburst kind of here. So it's not, we can have both kind of periosteal reaction in a single patient.
Yes, sir.
And is there any soft tissue component?
Yes, a soft tissue component is also present.
So what could be the differential here?
So firstly, it can be an osteosarcoma.
Yes, very good. And any close differential?
So it can be an Ewing's sarcoma.
Yes, Ewing's that is just to complete the list, but it's the ossified matrix is particularly the sine qua non of bone forming lesions.
Yes, sir.
So osteosarcoma is there.
Yes, sir.
So anyways, so this is a skeletally immature patient with the permeative kind of a lesion and every matrix and wide zone of transition and Codman and sunburst kind of a periosteal reaction with the soft tissue component. So last, this time who will volunteer? Dr. Noor Alam?
Yes, sir.
Would you like to take up this X-ray?
Yes, sir.
Yes, please.
Sir, this is an X-ray of a right shoulder with proximal humerus in a skeletally Mature patient.
Mm-hmm.
The location of tumor is, sir, metaphyseal region, sir.
Metaphyseal going to diaphysis. And
Metaphyseal
obviously
extending
extending to
to
epiphyseal. Yes, it's predominantly metaphyseal. I'll give it to you.
And sir, lesion, type of lesion, it is, sir, it is, sir, it is not geographical, and sir, it's going toward permeative type of lesion
Mm-hmm.
with matrix of the lesion is showing calcification, speculate calcification, and there is
Popcorn calcification, as we call it.
okay, sir, popcorn calcification, and the zone of transition. It is, sir, wide zone of transition, sir.
Obviously, we can't make out the where is the normal bone, abnormal bone
Yes, sir.
ending. Okay.
Yes, sir. And periosteal reaction is, yes, a periosteal reaction can be seen, sir. There's Codman triangle probably.
There is no periosteal reaction. These are all chondroid, popcorn
Okay.
calcifications.
Calcification, okay, sir.
So there is no.
And there's,
is there a soft tissue component?
it appears, sir, to have a soft tissue component. Sir.
Obviously, it's all soft tissue component here. No, you can see here.
Yes, sir.
So you can see this is all soft tissue component. This is all soft tissue component here. So is it benign tumor or a malignant tumor?
Sir, it appears to be a malignant tumor, sir.
So what could it be? So popcorn calcification, it's the hallmark of which kind of tumor? Yes, it's hallmark of a chondroid tumor. So it says there's a malignant chondroid tumor is chondrosarcoma. So basically, once you keep practicing all these lesions again and again with keeping all these points in mind, you will remember, and you will many times you will be able to reach a diagnosis, or at least a close differential, if not the exact diagnosis. Okay. So now we have discussed the clinical assessment part. We have discussed the radiological evaluation, the X-ray part. So now what could be diagnostic possibilities? So we could have an incidental lesion, which we call as a touch me not lesion, like we have here. Anyone, what's the X-ray, this X-ray, the top X-ray? Metaphyseal, well-defined, looking like a cortical lesion with crenulated margins, no periosteal reaction, no soft tissue component. Anyone?
Osteofibrous dysplasia.
Well, okay, osteofibrous dysplasia is a bit more aggressive than this. Yes, it is a fibrous kind of a thing. It is a non-ossifying fibroma. So you are close. I'll still give it to you. It's good. So cortical lesion, fibrous kind of a cortical lesion in a skeletally immature patient with a well-defined crenulated margin. This is the typical X-ray of a non-ossifying fibroma. Or OFD has a more aggressive kind of a picture. Anyways, what's this X-ray here? Anyone? We can see some calcifications here. So this is yes, please.
Bone islands, sir.
Something.
Bone islands.
Well, like okay, it could be bone island, it could be a chondroid tumor and chondroma. So all these are differentials. So even if you see bone island, you are not wrong, but this is more of a calcification. It looks more like an enchondroma, but yes, bone island is a differential of enchondroma, so you're not wrong that way. So idea is to approach the when the examiner, when he takes your exam, he's just seeing that how do you read an X-ray. He's not expecting to give the diagnosis. So anyways, so we may have the incidental finding like a touch me not lesion, or we may have a benign lesion or malignant or a metastatic lesion. So we need to have an MRI to have further assessment of the lesion. So it tells us about the extent of the disease. For example, this X-ray, we are with the wide zone of transition, we can't make out as in where is the normal bone and where is abnormal bone is ending. But on MRI, we can clearly make out that the lesion is approximately 22 centimeters from the knee joint. So in addition, it also tells us the relation of the neurovascular bundle from the tumor. Like in the top side, top MRI image, you can see the neurovascular bundle is on the surface, whereas on the bottom, we can see that neurovascular bundle is encased by the tumor. The main arteries, the posterior tibial artery is encased by the tumor. So next, it also tells us about the skip metastasis. So for example, if you get a full length MRI, and one thing I forgot to mention, whenever you order an X-ray or an MRI, you must order the full length X-ray or full length MRI of the bone for the simple reason so as to detect skip metastasis, if any. So many times people argue that even if you are suspecting, let's say, benign tumors, why do order for a full length X-ray? So there is no harm in getting a full length X-ray because that is not costing you anything. Anyways, you are getting X-ray done. So whether if there is a lesion in the distal femur, so rather than ordering X-ray knee, it's better to order the X-ray whole femur. Similarly, if you have an X-ray in the proximal tibia, it's better to order the X-ray and MRI whole tibia rather than X-ray knee or MRI knee.